I left without a trace after divorcing my cheating wife, but 18 years later, my son revealed the truth. After a long workday, I just needed a family photo for my presentation. So when I reached for her phone and found myself locked out, I had no idea that a simple moment would spiral into something I could never have imagined. Now, I look back, and everything I thought I knew about my wife was a lie. It all started on a regular Tuesday evening in the comfort of our familiar suburban home. I had just wrapped up a demanding workday and was putting together a presentation for a big client meeting. In my line of work as a financial analyst, visuals were everything, and nothing drove home reliability like family photos in a personal segment I had planned. It was a small touch, but a powerful one, and I wanted to use one of the older family pictures from back when the twins were still little. The best collection of these photos I knew was on Lisa's phone. I reached over to grab her phone off the counter and opened it, only to be met with a Face ID not recognized message. That was odd. I'd used her phone plenty of times before. I assumed it was a glitch, so I tried it again. The message popped up again, and my gut twisted slightly. I'd been locked out. I glanced over at Lisa, who was in the kitchen cleaning up. "Hey, did you change your Face ID settings?" I asked. She paused, but her hands kept scrubbing a little too long over the same plate. "Oh yeah, it was just, for security. The phone was acting up lately, so I thought resetting it would help." Now, I'm not a paranoid man by nature, but we'd been married 15 years, and I knew Lisa well enough to recognize when she was skirting the truth. Her voice had that tightness, the same one she got when she was dodging questions about why she was working late more frequently these days. I shrugged it off, though, not wanting to overthink things. "Well, I just needed an old family photo for the presentation tomorrow. Can you unlock it for me?" She glanced at me, hesitating longer than seemed necessary. "Why don't I just find it for you?" She replied a little too quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear as she darted into another room with her phone. I stood there, baffled. That small flicker of suspicion began to flare in my mind despite myself. When she returned, she handed me her phone with a photo already pulled up. "Here you go," she said, her tone overly bright. I took the phone and quickly sent the photo to myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lisa was defensive, agitated, and, most of all, secretive. That was the part that lingered in my mind. We built a life together based on openness, or so I thought, and now, a simple request for a family photo had turned into a circus of excuses. As the evening wore on, I couldn't let it go. I replayed the incident in my mind, searching for clues, anything that could justify her behavior. When I finally climbed into bed, Lisa was already lying with her back turned to me, scrolling on her phone. I couldn't help but ask, "Lisa, why did you really change the password and delete my Face ID?" She paused but didn't turn to look at me. "I told you, Mark, it was a security thing." "Come on," I pressed. "We've never had secrets before, so what's different now?" She whipped around, her face twisted with annoyance. "Not everything has to mean something, okay? You're being ridiculous." But it was her anger that really sent up the red flags. She'd never reacted like this over such a simple question, and suddenly I was wide awake, wondering what she was hiding. That night, sleep didn't come easily. And when it did, it was filled with fragmented dreams of Lisa's closed-off expressions and locked phones. As dawn broke, I was left with the realization that something about our marriage was fundamentally changing, and it wasn't just my imagination. The following days felt like a strange dance, one in which I was trying to play the unsuspecting husband, while my mind churned with suspicions I couldn't shake. Lisa's shift in behavior didn't stop with the password on her phone. I noticed her getting more elusive, always taking her calls in another room, and her phone never left her side. It felt like I was living with a stranger, someone who had something to hide and was growing increasingly careful to keep me in the dark. It was during one of her late meetings that my resolve snapped. I could no longer ignore the alarm bells ringing in my mind. Something had changed, and I needed to know why. As Lisa gathered her things to leave that evening, I pretended to settle into my routine, giving her a quick kiss goodbye and wishing her a productive meeting. But as soon as I heard her car pull out of the driveway, I sprang into action. I grabbed my own phone and opened the app that tracked her location, a feature we'd set up years ago for emergencies or convenience, back when trust was never in question. The app showed her at a hotel across town, nowhere near her office. That was the first dagger of betrayal. My heart pounded in my chest as I felt my world start to unravel, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe she was meeting a client, I told myself, anything to keep the pieces of my sanity together. An hour went by. Then two. She was still there. Finally, when I could bear it no longer, I took matters into my own hands and drove to the hotel, parking in a dark corner of the lot. After several tense minutes of waiting, I saw her emerge from the hotel lobby, her arm linked with a man I'd never seen before, a man who was definitely not her client. He was tall, dark-haired, and charming in that painfully obvious way. Watching them, I felt a sharp, sickening pang in my chest. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. She leaned into him, laughing in a way I hadn't seen her do in years, like she was young and carefree again. It was a laugh that was meant for me but had somehow slipped away, taken by this stranger. I drove home in silence, my mind numb with disbelief. I stumbled through the front door and sat down, feeling as if the floor had opened up beneath me. What had we become? How long had she been lying? The next few hours felt like a blur. I went through every memory we'd made, every promise we'd exchanged, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. Yet even as I reeled in shock, there was another, darker part of me that was ready for war. That night, I began gathering my own arsenal. I needed more proof, evidence that could make her face what she'd done, and so I would have a reason not to give her the courtesy of a clean break. I wanted her to feel every ounce of betrayal, to know that the life she was about to lose had been worth something. With that thought, I devised a plan. The next day, I took a personal day from work and made my way to the phone store. I had enough tech savvy to know there were options to clone a device. After a lengthy discussion with the tech guy, I was able to set up a way to receive her texts, emails, and photos on a secondary phone I would keep hidden. I felt a mix of shame and vindication as I left the store. This wasn't me. I wasn't the spying type, but I couldn't bear the idea of her lies festering in the background. Over the next week, the truth came pouring in like acid, eating away at every last trace of the love I thought we'd shared. The messages weren't just friendly exchanges, they were brazen confessions of her desire, conversations laced with secrets she was sharing with him instead of me. She told him things she'd never told me, intimate details, dreams, and wishes that once belonged to us alone. I read her words and felt as though I was watching her burn down our entire history. Photos came through too, pictures of her with him, taken on nights she'd claimed to be working. I saw the small, hidden parts of her life that she'd carefully concealed from me. There was no question anymore, Lisa had chosen this new life, this other man, and she'd done it all while keeping me in the shadows. But the most painful revelation wasn't what she'd done with him, it was what she'd kept from me. She had rewritten our past together in those messages, calling our marriage stifling and claiming she had been trapped. My heart ached as I realized her betrayal went deeper than infidelity. She had rewritten me, us, and everything we had been to justify her actions. I spent sleepless nights turning these thoughts over, wondering how much of our marriage had been real. And then one night, a thought settled into my mind, cold and calculating. If she had changed the terms of our relationship without my knowing, then I would change the ending. If she thought she could destroy me and walk away untouched, she was wrong. So, I planned. I didn't confront her outright. Instead, I started gathering everything I would need for my exit. I began liquidating my shares in our business, turning assets into cash. Now you can watch the second part by pressing